Something seismic is happening in Burkina Faso right now. A country once written off by outsiders as unstable, fragmented, or hopeless is rewriting the rules of African power, and doing it with a courage nobody was prepared for. This isn't a PR exercise. This isn't a manufactured narrative. This is a nation standing up straight after years of being bent out of shape by corruption, insecurity, and pressure from every direction. And at the center of this storm stands Captain Ibrahim Traoré, young, unapologetic, and refusing to inherit a broken system. His government has kicked off an anti-corruption crusade so aggressive, so sweeping, that it's forcing the whole nation to re-examine what sovereignty actually looks like when you practice it, not just preach it. For decades, corruption wasn't just a problem in Burkina Faso, it was a chain, a quiet chain. A chain that didn't rattle loudly enough for the world to notice, but one that held the country down all the same. Money meant for defense evaporated. Contracts for public goods ballooned into personal fortunes. Resources meant to develop the nation disappeared into private pockets. Ordinary Burkinabé lived with the consequences while elites lived above them. Now, that chain is snapping. The state isn't nibbling around the edges, it's cutting straight into the soft belly of the old order. Mining deals are being audited. Procurement networks are being exposed. Agencies that once operated like private businesses are being forced into daylight, and in a country with gold, manganese, zinc, and a future full of untapped potential, daylight is dangerous for anyone who got rich in the shadows. And let's be honest, no one expected this level of firepower, not this fast. Not this boldly, not in a region where corruption was often treated like weather, inevitable, unchangeable, something you simply endure. But here's the part that's catching everyone off guard. This isn't just a government initiative, it's becoming a cultural uprising. When a leader sets the tone and the people answer with the same energy, that's when a nation starts to transform from the inside out. Picture this for a moment. Village elders calling out suspicious mining trucks and demanding to see papers. Youth groups tracking local budgets and posting irregularities online, neighborhood committees intercepting illegal fuel diversions. These are not symbolic gestures. These are citizens defending their wealth like it's their birthright. Because it is. This is what African agency looks like when it stops asking for permission. And if this makes you proud of where Africa is heading, hit like right now. It tells the algorithm that African stories matter, and it pushes this video to more people who need to hear it. Now let's get into the deeper shift. This anti-corruption movement isn't happening in a vacuum. It's unfolding at the exact moment Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are tearing themselves free from old security arrangements and building a new regional identity, one rooted in sovereignty, not dependency. The Alliance of Sahel States isn't just a military pact, it's a political statement, a declaration that these nations will not be handled, supervised, or micromanaged. And for that vision to work, corruption can't simply be reduced. It has to be burned out of the system, because corruption is more than theft. It's leverage. It's the pressure point external actors use to steer a country's leadership. It's the excuse used to justify interference. It's the weakness that lets foreign interests dictate terms, remove corruption, and you remove the leash. That's why Burkina Faso's cleanout is so much bigger than internal housekeeping. It's the foundation for a new geopolitical posture, a posture where the country negotiates as an equal, not as a client state. But here's where things get even more interesting. Burkinabe people believe in this fight. Not blindly, not out of cultish loyalty, but because they've seen enough leaders who talked about reform without ever risking real conflict with entrenched interests. What's happening now feels different. It feels like confrontation. It feels like a break with the past, not a repainting of it. And when you talk to people in Kaya, Bobo Dioulasso, or even remote villages, you hear the same message. We're tired of being robbed. Let the clean out continue. Hope doesn't come cheap, but when it finally arrives, you protect it. And here's a sentence nobody expected to say about Burkina Faso in the global arena. This country is becoming an example. Not a perfect one, not a finished one, but a daring one. The kind that makes other African citizens wonder, if they can fight it, why can't we? Because once a people get a taste of agency, it's impossible to return to silence. The next challenge, the one that will test the entire movement, sits at the crossroads of governance, security, and transparency. Because fighting an insurgency while maintaining clean procurement lines is one of the hardest balancing acts any government can attempt. War zones swallow money. They thrive on urgency. They create loopholes where oversight usually dies. That's why corrupt networks around the world love insecurity. It gives them cover. But in Burkina Faso today, that cover is evaporating. The state is saying, even in crisis, we will not go blind again. That's a radical stance. And it's forcing every actor, soldiers, ministers, contractors, local administrators to rethink how they operate. Because when leadership makes corruption a national enemy, not a political slogan, everyone feels the heat. And here's something that hits even harder. Ordinary citizens are stepping up with the same intensity. When communities volunteer to rebuild security outposts with their own hands, or when youth groups escort supply trucks to ensure nothing disappears along the route, that's not obedience, that's ownership. That's a people saying, we don't just demand a clean state, we're part of it. This isn't the Burkina Faso the world thought it knew. Even the diaspora is waking up. Burkinabe living in France, Canada, Côte d'Ivoire, the US, people who left because the state wasn't working for them are suddenly paying attention again. They're sending resources, expertise, offers to assist, not because someone begged them to, but because they sense a country regaining its dignity. Diaspora engagement is a cheat code for national development. When it clicks, everything accelerates. If you're overseas and watching this, drop your flag in the comments. Let the world see how far the Burkinabe identity stretches. Now, let's zoom out. Something bigger is taking shape across the region. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, they aren't just cooperating, they're syncing their political pulse. They're building an identity rooted in self-respect. They're rejecting dependency, not with anger, but with clarity. This scares people who benefited from a fragmented, pliable Sahel. A united Sahel has leverage. A united Sahel can negotiate. A united Sahel can't be easily pressured or bribed. And corruption? That's the enemy alliance builders fear the most. It's the crack through which influence seeps in. Shut that crack, and your entire geopolitical footing shifts. That's why this anti-corruption crusade is not just domestic policy, it's regional strategy. But any transformation this bold will be tested. Some will try to sabotage reforms quietly, using bureaucracy as a shield. Others will try to spread doubt. Nothing will change. This is all for show. They'll get tired soon. That cynicism is the last defense of the old order. And yet, something powerful is happening. People are rejecting cynicism itself. They're tired of being told to lower their expectations. They're done believing that corruption is inevitable. You can feel an emotional current running through the country, one that says, we deserve better and we're not scared to demand it. When citizens and leadership align like this, old systems crumble, not because of force, because of irrelevance. This is why traction is building so fast. The reforms aren't perfect, no reform ever is, but they're real enough to spark belief, and belief spreads faster than any policy. Here's a picture worth holding. Local administrators who used to hide behind paperwork now posting expenses publicly on community boards. Procurement officers who once treated budgets like personal accounts now facing audits from both their superiors and the people they serve. Women's groups forming watchdog committees for local markets and agricultural subsidies. This is sunlight, pure and simple, and corruption fears sunlight. If this resonates with you, if you've seen the cost of corruption in your own life or community, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm to push African sovereignty content higher. Let's get into the regional ripple effect for a moment, because what's unfolding in Burkina Faso isn't isolated. It's feeding into a new Sahelian ecosystem, one that refuses the old script. We're watching a shift from fragile states to states that are experimenting, innovating, challenging old hierarchies. And yes, there's risk. Big risk. Some governments collapse under the weight of reforms this ambitious. Some leaders hesitate once the pressure builds. Some countries lose steam once the initial excitement fades. But here's the difference. The Burkinabe population isn't passive. They're not waiting for instructions. They're co-writing this moment. And when the people move with intention, when they refuse to be used, when they defend their wealth, their land, their dignity, then reform becomes more than a policy, it becomes a culture, and culture is hard to kill. The next phase of this story will depend on one thing: whether Burkina Faso can turn this anti-corruption wave into a permanent architecture, institutions, laws, oversight mechanisms, public habits. These are the things that survive leaders. These are the things that form the backbone of real sovereignty. And right now, you can feel Burkina Faso inching toward a future where corruption isn't normal, where integrity is expected, and where leadership answers to the people instead of the other way around. But this journey is about to collide head-on with one of the most defining tests the nation has ever faced, because every sovereignty project eventually hits the moment where ideals meet raw pressure. And that moment arrives when the systems being cleaned out try to fight back. Corruption never dies quietly. It retreats, it regroups, it shifts shape. The networks that fed off the old Burkina Faso aren't gone. They're just losing oxygen. And anything that loses oxygen gets desperate. This is where nations either level up or fall back into the same cycles they swore to escape. And right now, you can feel Burkina Faso choosing to level up. What makes this moment powerful isn't just government action, it's national alignment. When a leader says, "Corruption is a threat to our sovereignty," that matters. But when the people echo it with, "We're with you, finish the job," that's a force no corrupt network can comfortably withstand. That unity is dangerous. Dangerous to the old system, dangerous to the players who thrived in chaos, and dangerous to anyone who expected Burkina Faso to stay weak, scattered, and easily influenced. Because a united nation is unpredictable, a united nation is confident. A united nation negotiates with its chin up. And here's the twist. The clean-out is creating a new political psychology. People aren't just watching reforms, they're participating in them. They're reporting irregularities. They're challenging unfair pricing. They're demanding receipts. They're asking questions that used to be whispered. You don't build institutions from documents, you build them from culture. And Burkina Faso's culture is shifting faster than anyone expected. Picture this: local gold sites now being monitored by community youth who once had no say in where the revenue went. Agricultural equipment meant for development actually reaching farmers instead of vanishing into middleman networks. School budgets being scrutinized by parent committees that refuse to let a single franc disappear. That's the texture of real reform: messy, loud, public, and unshakable. And it gets even bigger. Across the region, other sovereignty-focused governments are watching Burkina Faso's momentum, not copying it blindly, but studying it, learning from it, asking how political unity, public morale, and anti-corruption campaigns can reinforce each other. Because when one Sahelian state breaks the old pattern, it gives permission for the others to imagine something new too. You can already see it in Mali's public finance reforms. You can see it in Niger's tightening control over strategic sectors. You can see it in the growing confidence of the alliance of Sahel states, now discussing joint budgets, shared industrial plans, and even unified energy strategies. These aren't fantasies, they're early blueprints. Because here's the silent truth: the Sahel has always had potential. What it lacked was alignment. Now alignment is forming, and corruption is the only thing that could break it. Remove corruption, and the region becomes one of the most self-determined blocs on the continent. This is why what Burkina Faso is doing right now is bigger than itself. It's sending a message to Africa and to the world. We're done being easy to manipulate. We're done being predictable. We're done accepting crumbs from systems that took our wealth and lectured us about governance afterward. This is African clarity, African confidence. African adulthood on the global stage. And it's rattling people who never expected Africa to talk like this. Not with anger, but with composure. Not with slogans, but with strategy. If you're feeling this shift, tap the like button. It tells YouTube that Africans want analysis that respects them, not narratives that diminish them. Now, let's address the crossroads ahead. The clean-out must keep expanding, not shrinking. It must reach the municipalities, the ministries, the contracts, the resource corridors, the foreign partnerships, the training programs. Every point where money or influence changes hands is a point where corruption tries to slip back in. But here's the advantage Burkina Faso has right now: momentum. Momentum is the most powerful currency in politics. Once people believe change is possible, they expect it, they push for it, they defend it. They reject leaders who slow it down, they elevate leaders who accelerate it. That kind of expectation becomes a shield against regression. and that's exactly what scares the old system. Because expectation can't be bribed away. This is why the sovereignty wave in Burkina Faso feels irreversible, not because the government says so, because the people have decided so. There's something almost poetic about it. A nation once dismissed is now becoming a symbol. A nation once underestimated is now inspiring others. A nation once pressured into compliance is now defining its own path without blinking. And when a people reclaim their dignity, the world has no choice but to adjust. This anti-corruption crusade is not the end of Burkina Faso's story. It's the ignition point, the spark at the base of a much larger transformation, economic, cultural, political, regional, a transformation that insists on fairness, on honesty, on sovereignty that is lived, not performed, a transformation that says, this is our land, this is our wealth, this is our future, and we will not hand it back to anyone, foreign or domestic, who tried to sell it. Burkina Faso is not rising quietly, it's rising with intention, and the continent is watching.